Today, I have the pleasure to welcome in the studio Keith O'Donnell, the co-founder of ATOZ. Welcome.
Thank you, Jerome. Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure. And I invited you to talk specifically about the relationship between business and art. I know that when you were studying, you financed your studies by painting. So this is why I picked you for this specific interview. So let's start with the first question. What is the artistic dimension when you set up a company like ATOZ?
So Jerome, it's a fundamentally creative act because you start to envision something that doesn't exist, which is what an artist does as well. You have to be able to imagine it's going to be there in the future, and then you have to imagine the execution of it, just like an artist does. Then as you execute your business strategy, you have to be able to constantly adapt. This is like most artists, though not all. As you paint or as you sculpt, you change it depending on how the reality evolves. I think the other interesting artistic dimension is that in building a business, you sketch. So artists sketch, you do a small picture to see if it works. In a business, you also try things out on a small scale to see how they work. If you think of the quintessential brainstorming, you get a whiteboard and somebody starts to draw, somebody starts to put arrows, boxes and everything else. In my case, I really like whiteboards, obviously, because I used to paint and draw, so the whiteboard becomes natural.
Mm-hmm. And when I think about painting, I'm a terrible painter, or I cannot even draw. Would you confirm that, I know Leonardo da Vinci said that you just have to see it and then you just copy it. Is this kind of mechanism that you learn to visualize on a white piece of paper, a form, and then you simply copy it, or do you have to really create it as you draw?
No. So Da Vinci was a genius. Mm-hmm. I think he knew exactly in his head what was there, and his draftsmanship was masterful. I'm nowhere close to that. Mm-hmm. So when I do anything, I need to kind of make it up as I go along, and it changes. I know roughly what will be there at the end, mm-hmm. but as I draw it, as I sketch it, as we execute a business plan, I'll adapt and I'll learn and I'll realize actually my vision at the end wasn't quite right, so we adapt along the way. It's a different kind of skill set.
And I think it's also the difficulty in business. We know that there are many types of entrepreneurs. You've got the crazy entrepreneur who doesn't really have any idea and he just runs very fast, and sometimes it works really well. You've got the guy who is overthinking it, is working so hard on the business plan that he basically never starts. So basically what I learned from you here is that you need to get the main idea, and then you need to start and then fine-tune constantly until you reach what you would call perfection, basically, or a good result. So let's go to maybe a comparison with an artist. If you could compare your firm with an artist, which one would it be?
That's tough because I have huge respect and admiration for many artists. Mm-hmm. So picking one is difficult. But if I had to, I think in all modesty, I'd pick Matisse. Mm-hmm. Why do I pick Matisse? He did something very new against the existing consensus, but he was still anchored in his core skills. He was a great draftsman, a great painter, a great colorist. The other thing is that over his career, he expressed himself in many different ways. Obviously, he drew, he painted, he did cutouts, those amazing cutouts, sculpture, stained glass. So all these different ways of expressing himself, but yet there was always this recognizable Matisse style. I'd like to think, modestly again, that ATOZ is like that. We set up a firm in a way nobody else had, but at the heart of our firm was outstanding client service in all the areas we wanted to be in. Equally, we've done many things over the years: tax, corporate implementation, corporate finance, fund services. But I think the ATOZ touch is always there. You can always see it coming through. What is the ATOZ touch? What's our style? It's the technical quality. It's the practical touch. It's the commercial approach. We get business as well, and the fact it's partner-led.
Yeah, and every time I'm in your company, I can really feel the culture. It's an extremely strong culture. You can see it in everybody you meet. There's a very strong sense of ownership. You can feel people are very highly trained. And of course, I think it's the same for painters. You could just start drawing, but you need this very strong background. There's one quote, maybe you know it from the treaty. I'm going back to Da Vinci, which I loved a lot. He called it the problem of the young painter. And the idea is that when he looked at the paintings of young painters, every character on the painting had the face of the painter. And basically what he said is, you really need to study yourself, the shape of your hand, of your face, so that you free yourself from it and you can express yourself really freely. So maybe let's look into the future. You celebrate 2 decades of growth. Now, where do you see the Luxembourg in 20 years, and where do you see ATOZ in this future?
Yeah, it's a good question. So if you take Luxembourg first, I mean, simple maths, in 20 years, if we assume a growth rate of between 2 and 2.5% in the population, which I think is reasonable, it's kind of at the high end of historic growth rates, but I think it's eminently achievable for Luxembourg. That's 1 million people in Luxembourg. And I think we've got to start thinking now, because 20 years is a very short period of time if I look back, and particularly when you're planning for people. So we need to start now to plan the infrastructure, the housing, the system that we have that'll keep all these people together. Lots of them will be non-Luxembourg natives. They'll be coming into the country. How do we make them feel welcome? Over the last few months, I've been talking to lots of people of other countries who are thinking of moving. There's a lot of political uncertainty. There's a period of movement where people are saying, I'm not comfortable here, I'll move to somewhere else. Mm-hmm. And one thing I've heard consistently from people linked to Luxembourg is that you can come to Luxembourg as a foreigner. I did it, you did it. Mm-hmm. And you don't get this feeling of exclusion. You don't kid yourself, I'm not a local when I arrive, the day I arrive, but at least I can integrate and I can be accepted. And we really have to continue that on a social level. Then, as I said, the infrastructure really has to follow, and we have to start thinking as a group of political leaders, business leaders, if we want to make this jump, and I believe we do have to make the jump, we need to start planning it now. I think if we plan it right, we can also avoid this false dichotomy between environmental sustainability and growth. I think it is possible to grow sustainably, and I think if anything, if we plan to do it sustainably, we will find that growth easier. Mm-hmm. Because if we're trying to attract people to a country and we say, it's green, it's a pleasant place to live, we've got good quality infrastructure, we've low pollution, public transport, this attracts people, this speaks to people now, they like this. So there's that whole physical dimension. I think in our cities, we need to densify, we need to go up, we need to have more people in them. This idea that we don't have enough space, I don't buy it. But again, that takes a change of mindset. We've got to get away from, we all want our own house with our own garden, or that we all need a large space. I always say people adapt. I know lots of people who've moved to Tokyo. They were used to having apartments of 200,000 square meters, 200 square meters. They moved to Tokyo and there's a family of 4 and 50 square meters. Within 2 months, they're perfectly happy.
They get used to it.
They get used to it. So we can adapt. And I think that's part of it on the infrastructure level. Then I think the other part, and this is closer to my heart, obviously, as an advisor, Luxembourg is a relatively unique country in that it still has some financial headroom. Our debt to GDP ratio is still manageable. Mm-hmm. So we can afford to make some investments in our tax system, our social security system. We can afford to take some risk as well because we have this headroom. Most of the countries around us don't have this.
True.
They are economically up to there. They have very little margin to maneuver. We can see this in the changes of government. The whole discussion is, can anyone afford their political program? I would say whatever the political program is in Luxembourg, we can afford it. So let's pick it wisely and plan for the future.
Yeah, it's still less than 30% of...
we're below 30% of GDP. That's extraordinary by European standards.
Yes.
The European limit is 60. I'm not suggesting we go there, but we can afford to take some risk. Mm-hmm. Then you were asking, what will ATOZ be doing in all this for the next 20 years? I think we'll be doing a few things. First of all, we'll be out there, basically exporting services. Our clients are all around the world. So we're a big exporter. Second thing we'll be doing is we'll be encouraging businesses to come to Luxembourg and people to come to Luxembourg. Mm-hmm. That's what we do. All my partners travel non-stop. And this is partly what we do. We explain what Luxembourg is, why people want to come here. Final dimension, I think, is we as a firm, and this is really interesting, we've started work on what the next 20 years look like. I think our firm will be transformed in 20 years. The technological advances that are coming now, some of it's bleeding edge, it's not working well, but the power of this will change things. And then you can discuss, is it a threat, is it an opportunity? We firmly believe it's an opportunity. We think we can leverage the talent we have to make things better, faster, and still provide the kind of service we want to clients and the kind of service clients need. So there we are, 20 years on, Luxembourg, 1 million people, booming green economy, ATOZ, growing, technological, advanced, happy bears.
Perfect. And I wish you a happy 2 more decades of growth. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Jerome.
Thank you.